The Coca-Cola splashed across Sophie Chen's face in slow motion, the cold liquid mixing with the expensive perfume of the woman who'd just thrown it. Laughter erupted from table 12. 3 young men in designer suits slapping the table as brown soda dripped from Sophie's nose, her chin, soaking into her white button-down shirt. Oh my God, did you see her face? The blonde woman, Kristina something, doubled over laughing. Her diamond bracelet caught the light as she high-fived her friends. Priceless. Sophie stood frozen, the glass still in the woman's manicured hand, now empty except for ice cubes. The restaurant, Bellissimo in the heart of Manhattan's financial district, had gone quiet. 40 tables of wealthy diners turned to watch, their forks paused mid-air, their conversations dying. The soda burned Sophie's eyes. She could taste the sweetness on her lips, feel it trickling down her neck, beneath her collar. Her hands trembled at her sides, but she kept them there. Didn't wipe her face. Didn't move. Years of training, years of her father's voice in her head, kept her still. Never show weakness. Never let them see you break. What's wrong? One of the men asked, his voice dripping with mock concern. Don't you like Coke? I thought all you people loved sugar. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. His friends laughed harder. Sophie's jaw tightened. She knew that tone. She'd heard it her whole life. All you people. Code for Asian. Code for immigrant. Code for not good enough to serve them. Marcus, the floor manager, appeared at her elbow. His hand gripped her arm, fingers digging in. Table 12. What seems to be the problem? His voice was all politeness, but his grip said something else entirely. Your waitress spilled a drink, Kristina lied smoothly, gesturing to Sophie's soaked shirt. We were just having fun, and she got clumsy. We'd like her removed from our section. She's making us uncomfortable. Sophie's throat closed. The lie was so blatant, so obvious. At least 15 people had seen what really happened. But she also knew how this worked. These people, the ones with platinum credit cards and vacation homes in the Hamptons, they could say anything. The restaurant would believe them. I'm so sorry for the inconvenience, Marcus said, his voice tight. He turned to Sophie, and his eyes held a warning. Go clean yourself up, now. But I didn't, Sophie started. Now. Marcus's smile was pure venom. Sophie walked toward the kitchen, soda dripping with each step, leaving a trail across the marble floor. Behind her, she heard Marcus apologizing profusely, offering complimentary wine, promising the best service. The table was laughing again, already back to their expensive meal. In the bathroom, Sophie stared at her reflection. Brown liquid stained her white shirt, her black hair plastered to her forehead. Her makeup was ruined, mascara running in dark tracks down her cheeks. She looked exactly how they saw her, powerless, insignificant, someone they could humiliate for entertainment. She grabbed paper towels, started dabbing at her shirt. It was useless. The stain had already set. And even if she could clean it, even if she could walk back out there with her head high, what then? They'd already won. They'd made her nothing in front of everyone. The bathroom door swung open. Marcus stormed in, not caring this was the women's room. What the hell was that? They threw. I don't care what they did. Marcus cut her off. Do you know who that is out there? Kristina Vandermeer. Her father owns half the buildings in this neighborhood. Those men work for Goldman Sachs. They spend $10,000 every time they come here. Sophie's hands clenched around the wet paper towels. They assaulted me. They had fun at your expense. There's a difference. Marcus crossed his arms. This is a 5-star restaurant, Sophie. We cater to a certain clientele. If you can't handle their humor, maybe you're not cut out for this. Humor? Sophie's voice cracked despite herself. They poured soda on me because you're what? Marcus leaned in close. Go ahead. Say it. Make this about race. Make yourself the victim. That'll really help your case. Sophie bit her tongue hard enough to taste blood. She wanted to scream, wanted to tell him exactly what she thought of him, of this restaurant, of people like Kristina Vandermeer who treated servers like props in their entertainment. But she needed this job. Desperately. After her mother died 2 years ago, Sophie had dropped out of NYU to take care of her younger brother. Daniel was 15 now, in a private school Sophie could barely afford. The tuition was $20,000 a year. Then there was rent on their apartment in Queens, utilities, food, clothes. Everything fell on Sophie's shoulders. She worked doubles 6 days a week, survived on 3 hours of sleep, sent every penny to Daniel's school, to keeping them afloat. This job at Bellissimo paid better than anywhere else she'd worked. The tips alone were what kept Daniel in that school, kept him away from the streets, kept him safe. "I can handle it," Sophie said finally, the words like ash in her mouth. "Good." Marcus's smile returned. "Because we have a problem. Table 12 is demanding you be fired. They say you ruined their evening." Sophie's world tilted. "What?" "They're saying you were rude to them, that you spilled the drink deliberately out of spite, that you created a scene." Marcus shrugged. "It's their word against yours, and I believe them. That's not what happened. Ask any other customer." Other customers saw a server covered in soda and a table of upset guests. They're not going to contradict the Vandermeer family. Marcus pulled an envelope from his pocket. "Your final paycheck. Minus the cost of the meal we're comping for table 12, of course." The envelope felt light. Too light. Sophie opened it with shaking hands. $347 for 2 weeks of work, after deductions. "This isn't enough," she whispered. "Then you should have been more careful." Marcus turned toward the door. "Clean out your locker. I want you gone in 10 minutes. He left. The bathroom door swung shut behind him with a soft whoosh that sounded like the end of everything. Sophie sank to the floor, expensive tile cold against her legs. $347. Daniel's tuition payment was due in 5 days. $20,000. She'd been saving, scraping together enough. She was so close. 2 more paychecks, and she'd have it. Now she had nothing. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. A text from Daniel. "How's work? Don't forget we're getting pizza Friday for my birthday." Sophie closed her eyes. 15 years old. Still so young. Still believing pizza on Friday was a celebration. Still trusting that Sophie would take care of everything. She couldn't let him down. Couldn't let him see how close they were to losing everything. Couldn't let him know that Table 12's entertainment, their stupid, cruel joke, might cost him his education. Sophie stood slowly, wiped her eyes, threw away the paper towels. She looked at herself one more time in the mirror. Same face, same person. But something had shifted behind her eyes. Something cold and hard. She'd spent 2 years hiding who she really was. 2 years pretending her last name was Chen instead of Chen Zhao. 2 years keeping her distance from her father's world, from his business, from everything he represented, because her mother had made her promise. On her deathbed, weak from the cancer eating her alive, she'd grabbed Sophie's hand. "Promise me," she'd whispered. "Promise you'll keep Daniel away from that life, from your father. Promise you'll be different." And Sophie had promised, had walked away from the Zhao family, from the money, the power, the protection, had chosen to struggle alone rather than accept help from a man whose hands were stained with blood. But that was before she understood how cruel the world could be to people without power, before she learned that playing by the rules meant nothing when the rules were written by people like Kristina Vandermeer. Sophie pulled out her phone, scrolled through her contacts until she found a number she'd never called, never wanted to call. Her finger hovered over it. Once she pressed dial, there was no going back. Her mother's dream of a clean life, a normal life, would die with that call. But Daniel's future mattered more than promises to the dead. Sophie pressed call. The phone rang twice before a man's voice answered, low and dangerous. "Who is this?" "It's Sophie," she said quietly. "It's your daughter." Silence. Long enough that Sophie thought he might hang up. Then, "Sophie, you're calling me. I need to see you." "When?" "Now." Another pause. "Where are you?" "Bellissimo. In Manhattan." "I know it." Something shifted in his tone. Something dark. "Don't move. I'll be there in 22 minutes. The line went dead. Sophie sat on the bathroom floor, phone clutched in both hands, and wondered what she'd just started, what she'd just become. Outside, she could hear Table 12 still laughing, still celebrating, still completely unaware that they'd just humiliated the daughter of Vincent Zhao, the most dangerous man in New York's Chinatown. Still completely unaware that laughter like that had consequences. Vincent Zhao got the call while reviewing accounts in his office above the Red Dragon restaurant, his legitimate restaurant. the one tourists visited for authentic dim sum and Instagram-worthy decor. The restaurant that laundered money from his other businesses, the ones tourists never saw. It's your daughter. For a moment, Vincent forgot how to breathe. Sophie. His Sophie, who hadn't spoken to him in 2 years, who'd looked at him with her mother's disappointed eyes and walked away from the family, who'd chosen poverty over accepting his help. I need to see you. Something in her voice made Vincent's blood run cold. Not anger, not defiance. Something worse. Defeat. When? Now. Vincent was already standing, reaching for his coat. Where are you? Bellissimo. In Manhattan. He knew the place. High-end Italian. Catered to Wall Street types and trust fund babies. What was Sophie doing there? She'd been working there. He'd known that. Known everything about her life even though she'd cut him out of it. He had people watching her building, making sure she was safe, making sure nobody touched her. But he'd respected her wishes, stayed away, let her struggle and suffer and pretend she could make it alone. Because that's what her mother had wanted. But now Sophie was calling. Now something had happened. Don't move, Vincent said. I'll be there in 20 minutes. He hung up and turned to Michael, his second in command, who stood by the door. Get the car. We're going to Manhattan. Problem? Maybe. Vincent grabbed his suit jacket, the one he wore for legitimate business meetings. The one that made him look like a successful restaurateur instead of what he really was. My daughter needs me. Michael's eyebrows rose, but he asked no questions. Smart man. He just nodded and pulled out his phone, making calls. By the time Vincent reached the street, 3 black SUVs were waiting. Overkill for a dinner meeting. But Vincent Zhao didn't take chances. Especially not where his daughter was concerned. The drive took 18 minutes. Vincent spent every second of it imagining scenarios. Sophie hurt. Sophie in danger. Sophie finally coming home because she'd realized she needed family. What he didn't imagine was walking into Bellissimo and finding his daughter in the bathroom, shirt stained brown, eyes red from crying, looking more broken than he'd ever seen her. Vincent stopped in the doorway. For a moment he was back 10 years, watching his wife die in a hospital bed, watching helplessness destroy someone he loved, feeling powerless for the first time in his life. Sophie. His voice came out rougher than intended. She looked up. And God, she looked so much like her mother. Same delicate features. Same steel spine that refused to bend until it finally broke. Dad. The word sounded foreign in her mouth. She'd called him Vincent for years. Just Vincent, like he was a stranger. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have called. What happened? Vincent stepped into the bathroom, closed the door behind him. Who did this to you? Sophie laughed, bitter and broken. Does it matter? It matters to me. She stood slowly, wiping her eyes. Some customers, they threw soda on me for fun, got me fired. It's not a big deal. Vincent's hands clenched. Not a big deal. I'll find another job, Sophie's voice cracked. Daniel's tuition is due. I'm short. I was going to make it, but now I can't, and I don't know what to do, and I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, I promised, Mom. I wouldn't ask you for help, but I can't let Daniel lose his school, I can't. She was crying now. Really crying. And Vincent did what he'd wanted to do for 2 years. He crossed the bathroom and pulled his daughter into his arms. She fought for a second, then collapsed against him, sobbing like she was 15 again instead of 23. Like she was still his little girl instead of the grown woman who'd walked away. I've got you, Vincent murmured. I've got you, Sophie. It's okay. It's not okay. Mom would be so disappointed. Your mother loved you more than anything in this world. Vincent pulled back, looked into Sophie's eyes. She wanted you safe and happy. That's all. If asking me for help keeps you safe, she'd understand. But the promises to the dead don't matter more than the living. Vincent's jaw tightened. Daniel needs his school. You need your dignity. And the people who did this to you? His voice dropped. They need to learn there are consequences. Sophie's eyes widened. Dad, don't. Tell me what happened. All of it. So she did. Told him about Table 12. About Kristina Vandermeer and her friends. About the Coca-Cola and the laughter and Marcus taking their side. About being fired for being humiliated. Vincent listened in silence. His face showed nothing. But inside, rage built like a tsunami. Cold, methodical, devastating. These people, these spoiled children playing with money they didn't earn, They'd dared to touch his daughter. His Sophie. They'd poured soda on her like she was trash, laughed at her, cost her the job she needed to survive. They didn't know who she was. Didn't know her last name meant something in this city. Didn't know that humiliating Sophie Chen meant starting a war with Vincent Zhao. They were about to learn. "I'll handle it," Vincent said when Sophie finished. "Handle it how? Does it matter?" Sophie bit her lip. She was her mother's daughter. Gentle, kind, wanted to believe in justice and fairness, and people facing consequences through proper channels. But she was also his daughter, and right now, stained and crying and broken, she wanted blood. "Make them hurt," Sophie whispered. "Not physically. I don't want anyone dead. But make them understand what they did. Make them feel what I felt," Vincent smiled. It wasn't a nice smile. "Consider it done." "And Dad?" Sophie's voice was small. "Daniel's tuition already handled." Vincent pulled out his phone, sent a quick text. 20,000 will be in the school's account by morning, plus enough for rent and expenses for the next 6 months. "I can't accept." "You can. You will." Vincent's voice softened. "Sophie, you're my daughter. Helping you isn't charity. It's what fathers do." Fresh tears spilled down Sophie's cheeks. "Thank you. Don't thank me yet." Vincent offered his hand. "Come on. Let's get you cleaned up. Then we're going to have a conversation with table 12. Sophie took his hand. Let him lead her out of the bathroom. In the hallway, 3 of Vincent's men waited, Michael among them. They took one look at Sophie's stained shirt and their expressions went flat and dangerous. "Sir?" Michael asked quietly. "Table 12? Vincent said. "Find out everything about them. Names, addresses, employers, family connections, everything. I want it within the hour." "And the restaurant management?" Vincent's smile returned. "Oh, we'll deal with them too. But first, I want to meet the people who thought my daughter was good for entertainment." They walked into the dining room. 40 tables fell silent as Vincent Zhao entered with his daughter and 3 men who screamed danger. And in the back corner, table 12 was still laughing, still drinking their complimentary wine, completely unaware their world was about to end. Vincent Zhao walked through Bellissimo like he owned it. In a way, he did. The restaurant paid protection to the Luciano family, who paid tribute to Vincent for operating in adjacent territory. The complicated web of New York's underworld meant that every high-end establishment in Manhattan had connections, whether they admitted it or not. The maitre d', a thin man with a pencil mustache, intercepted them near the entrance. "Sir, I'm sorry, but we're fully booked this evening." Vincent didn't even look at him. Just kept walking, his men flanking Sophie protectively. The maitre d' scrambled after them, voice rising with panic. "Sir, you can't just—" He grabbed Vincent's arm. Michael moved so fast the maitre d' didn't see it coming. One moment he was reaching, the next his hand was twisted behind his back, his face pressed against the wall. Gentle enough not to break anything, firm enough to make the point. "Don't touch Mr. Zhao," Michael said quietly. The restaurant had gone completely silent now, forks frozen mid-air, conversations dead, every eye on the scene unfolding. Vincent scanned the room until he found table 12. Back, a corner, still laughing, still oblivious. Kristina Vandermeer threw her head back, blonde hair catching the light, diamond earrings glittering. The 3 men with her were red-faced from wine and laughter. "There," Vincent said softly. Sophie's hand tightened on his arm. For a moment, he thought she might stop him. Tell him this wasn't worth it, that she'd changed her mind. Instead, she said, "The woman in the black dress, that's Kristina. The man on her left with the Rolex," he threw the soda. "The other 2 held me while Marcus, that's the manager, took their side." Vincent absorbed every detail, memorized every face. "Which one said all you people?" Sophie's voice hardened. "The one with the Rolex." "Good." Vincent gestured to his men. "Wait here with Sophie. Dad, trust me." He touched her cheek gently, the way he used to when she was small and had nightmares. "I'm just going to talk to them." He walked across the restaurant alone, every step measured, every movement controlled. Vincent had learned decades ago that violence was a tool, not a solution. The best way to destroy someone wasn't to hurt them physically. It was to dismantle everything they believed made them untouchable. He reached table 12, stood there, waiting. It took them nearly 30 seconds to notice him. They were that comfortable, that arrogant, that certain of their place in the world. Kristina looked up first. Her smile faltered when she saw Vincent's expression. "Can we help you?" "I'm Vincent Zhao." He said it quietly, conversationally. "I believe you know my daughter, Sophie." Confusion flickered across their faces. The man with the Rolex Chad something. Vincent's memory supplied frowned. "Your daughter?" "The waitress you assaulted 20 minutes ago." The table went still. Vincent watched recognition dawn slowly. Watched them realize this wasn't another server they could dismiss. This was something else. Assaulted? Kristina's laugh was nervous now. "That's a strong word. We were just having fun. You poured Coca-Cola on her." Vincent's voice never rose. Never needed to. "You humiliated her in front of 50 people. You got her fired for your entertainment." "Look, if she's upset," Chad started. "She's not upset." Vincent smiled. "She's my daughter. There's a difference." The other man at the table, recognizing danger too late, pulled out his phone. "I'm calling security. Put the phone down." Vincent didn't look at him. Didn't need to. Something in his tone made the man's hand freeze. Marcus appeared, breathless and sweating. "Mr. Zhao, I'm sorry. There's been a misunderstanding. You fired my daughter." "I didn't know," she never said. She shouldn't have to say. Vincent finally looked at Marcus. And the manager went pale. "She did nothing wrong. These people assaulted her. You took their side because they have money. Because you're a coward who values tips over human dignity." "Sir, I can reinstate her immediately." "Too late." Vincent turned back to table 12. "Do you know what my daughter did after you humiliated her? After she lost her job?" They stared at him, silent now, beginning to understand they'd made a terrible mistake. "She cried in the bathroom." Vincent continued softly. "My daughter, who survived her mother's death, who dropped out of college to raise her brother, who works doubles 6 days a week to pay for his education," she cried. "Because you thought it would be funny to pour soda on someone you considered beneath you." Kristina's voice shook. "We didn't know. You didn't care." Vincent leaned down, hands on their table. "You saw a waitress. Someone without power. Someone you could hurt without consequences. You were wrong. What do you want?" Chad's bravado was cracking. "Money? We can pay." "I don't want your money." Vincent straightened. "I want you to understand something. In this city, there are people with power and people without. You thought you were the first. Kind. You're not." He looked at each of them in turn. "Kristina Vandermeer, your father owns Vandermeer Properties. Very successful. Shame about the building code violations at his new development in Brooklyn. The ones you've been bribing inspectors to ignore." Kristina's face went white. "Chad Morrison. Goldman Sachs, impressive. Although insider trading is less impressive, especially when the SEC gets an anonymous tip with transaction records." Chad stood abruptly. "You can't. Sit down." Vincent didn't raise his voice. Chad sat. "James Chen, no relation to my daughter, and Peter Zhang. Both traders. Both with gambling debts to some very unpleasant people. Debts that might suddenly get called in." The four of them looked like they'd been slapped. Vincent smiled without warmth. "I know everything about you. Your addresses, your routines, your secrets. I know the affair Chad is having with his secretary. I know Kristina's cocaine habit. I know that James embezzled $40,000 from a client last year. I know Peter's real name isn't Zhang, it's Zelinsky, and he changed it to get a diversity scholarship. The restaurant was so quiet, Vincent could hear someone's phone vibrating 3 tables away. So here's what's going to happen," Vincent continued. "You're going to write my daughter an apology, a real one, handwritten. You're going to donate $20,000 each to the scholarship fund at her brother's school. You're going to remember this moment every time you think about treating another person like they're less than you. And if we don't?" Chad tried for defiance. "Then I stop being polite." Vincent's smile disappeared. "I make phone calls. Your secrets stop being secret. Your lives stop being comfortable. You learn what it's like to be powerless in a city that doesn't care about you." He straightened his jacket. "You have until tomorrow at noon. Apologies to my daughter. Donations to the school. I'll know if you don't comply. And trust me, you don't want me to follow up personally." Vincent turned to leave, then paused. "Oh, and table 12? Your meal tonight is on the house. Consider it a gift. The last free thing you'll get from anyone for a very long time." He walked back to Sophie, who stood with his men, watching with wide eyes. "Let's go." "That's it?" Sophie whispered. That's it. As they walked out, Vincent heard the chaos starting behind them. Raised voices. Panic. Marcus trying to apologize to Table 12 while they screamed about lawsuits and lawyers. None of it mattered. Vincent had made his point. And more importantly, he'd made 4 very comfortable people understand that cruelty had consequences. In the car, Sophie was quiet for a long time. Vincent didn't push, just let her process. Finally, she said, "You knew all that about them. Just like that. I always know." Vincent looked out the window at the passing city. Information is power, Sophie. More than money, more than violence. Knowing someone's secrets means they can never surprise you. It's terrifying. It's necessary. He turned to her. In my world, you survive by knowing more than everyone else. By being prepared for every possible threat. Sophie touched her stained shirt. This is your world now, isn't it? I called you. I pulled you in. I can't go back to pretending I'm not your daughter. No, Vincent agreed. You can't. But that doesn't mean you have to become like me. What if I want to? The words came out small, uncertain. Vincent studied his daughter, saw the anger simmering beneath her calm surface, saw the part of her that wanted revenge, wanted power, wanted to never feel helpless again, saw himself, 25 years ago, after his father was killed by rivals who thought the Zhao family was weak. Then I'll teach you, Vincent said quietly. But Sophie, once you start down this path, it changes you. Your mother didn't want this for you. For Daniel. My mother isn't here. Sophie's voice broke. I am. And I'm tired of being powerless. Tired of people like Kristina Vandermeer treating me like trash. Tired of living paycheck to paycheck while they waste more money on one meal than I make in a month. Vincent took her hand. Anger is useful, but it's also dangerous. Don't let it consume you. How do I stop it? You don't. You channel it. He squeezed her fingers. You make it work for you instead of destroying you. That's what I did. What my father taught me. Sophie leaned against his shoulder, something she hadn't done since she was a child. I missed you. I missed you too. Vincent's voice was rough. Every day for 2 years I wanted to call. To help. To make your life easier. But I respected your choice. Respected your mother's wishes. I'm sorry I walked away. Don't be. You needed to try. Needed to see if you could make it without me. He kissed the top of her head. Now you know you can, but you also know you don't have to. The car pulled up to Vincent's building in Chinatown. Not the restaurant. His private residence, a penthouse that took up the entire top floor of a building he owned. Come up, Vincent said. We'll get you cleaned up. Then we'll talk about your future. Michael was waiting in the apartment when they arrived. He'd clearly made calls during the drive because he had a folder thick with papers. Kristina Vandermeer, he said, handing Vincent the file. 26. Trust fund baby. Father owns Vandermeer properties, worth approximately $700 million. She's the youngest of 3 children. Graduated from Columbia with a degree in art history she's never used. Current occupation. Social media influencer. Lives off daddy's money. Vincent flipped through photos, financial records, social media posts. Kristina's life laid out in black and white. The men? He asked. Chad Morrison, 28, Goldman Sachs trader. Makes $300,000 a year, spends $400,000, credit card debt up to his eyeballs. Parents are school teachers in Ohio. Self-made man, very proud of it. Vincent studied Chad's photo. Proud. That was useful. Self-made men hated being reminded they were still vulnerable. James Chen and Peter Zhang, real name Peter Zielinski, both 27, both traders at smaller firms. They're part of Kristina's social circle. Tag along for the money and connections. Weaknesses? Vincent asked. Kristina can't survive without daddy's money. Chad is leveraged to the hilt and terrified of looking poor. James has a girlfriend who thinks he makes more than he does. Peter's scholarship fraud could tank his career if it came out. Vincent smiled. Perfect. Sophie emerged from the bedroom wearing clean clothes, her hair wet from the shower. She looked younger without makeup, more like the girl who used to do homework at his kitchen table. What's all that? She asked, gesturing to the files. Research. Vincent spread the documents across the dining table. Your attackers' lives in detail. Sophie moved closer, studying the papers. Her face was unreadable as she absorbed information about Kristina's spending habits, Chad's debt, the other's secrets. This feels wrong, she said finally. Like we're invading their privacy. They invaded yours when they humiliated you publicly. Two wrongs don't make a right. No. Vincent looked at her steadily. But strategic wrongs make things even. Sophie bit her lip. Mom always said revenge was a poison. Your mother was a good person. Better than me. Vincent's voice softened. But Sophie, she also died broke and exhausted because she wouldn't accept help, wouldn't use the resources available to her, wouldn't let me make her life easier. She had principles, and those principles killed her. The words came out harsher than Vincent intended. He saw Sophie flinch. I'm sorry, but it's true. She worked herself to death rather than compromise, rather than accept that sometimes you need power to survive in this world. Sophie was silent for a long moment. Then, what happens tomorrow when they don't apologize? They'll apologize, Vincent said confidently. But if they don't? He met her eyes. Then I follow through on my threats. Vandermeer Properties gets investigated. Chad's insider trading comes to light. The others face their own consequences. You'd ruin their lives? I'd give them the same consideration they gave you. Vincent's voice was steel. None. Sophie looked back at the files, at Kristina's smiling face in a photo from some charity gala. She looks happy. She's never known real hardship, never been told no, never faced consequences. Vincent stood beside his daughter. Some people need to learn that actions matter, that you can't treat others like toys without paying a price. Is that what you do? Teach people lessons? Sometimes. Vincent turned her to face him. Sophie, I've done terrible things to protect this family. Things your mother never knew about. Things I'll never tell you unless you need to know. But everything I've done had a purpose to make sure people like Kristina Vandermeer can never hurt people like us without fear. People like us? Immigrants. People who came here with nothing. People who work hard and still get treated like they're less than. His hands gripped her shoulders. Your grandfather came to this country with $8 and a suitcase, built everything from nothing, and people still looked down on him, still called him slurs, still treated him like garbage. Vincent's voice grew cold. He taught me that respect isn't given, it's taken. That power is the only thing that protects you from people who think they're better than you because they were born in the right zip code. Sophie's eyes filled with tears. I'm so tired of being afraid, of worrying about rent and bills and whether I can keep Daniel safe, of people like Marcus and Kristina making me feel small. Then let me help. Vincent wiped her tears gently. Not just with money, with everything. Come back to the family. Let me teach you how this world really works, how to protect yourself, how to make sure you're never powerless again. What about Daniel? Mom wanted him away from this life. Daniel doesn't have to be involved. We'll keep him in school, keep him clean, give him the normal life your mother wanted. Vincent's voice was firm. But you, Sophie, you're old enough to choose. Old enough to understand what you're accepting. Sophie looked at the files again. At the evidence of wealth and privilege and cruelty. At the proof that people like Kristina existed in a different world, one where throwing soda on waitresses was entertainment. Teach me, she said finally. Teach me how to make sure this never happens again. Vincent smiled. We start tomorrow. The next morning, Vincent's phone rang at 9 a.m. He was in his office, reviewing territory, agreements with the Luciano family, when Michael interrupted. Boss, you'll want to see this. Vincent followed him to the computer. On screen was a social media post from Kristina Vandermeer, posted 2 hours earlier. It was a photo of a handwritten letter on expensive stationery. The post had already gone viral. At Kristina Vandermeer. Yesterday, I did something unforgivable. I humiliated a restaurant server for my own entertainment. I poured soda on her, laughed at her, and got her fired. I did this because I thought I was better than her. I was wrong. Sophie Chen is a better person than I will ever be. She works to support her family while I waste my father's money on nothing. This letter is my apology, but words aren't enough. I'm donating $20,000 to her brother's school scholarship fund and taking a hard look at who I've become. To Sophie, I'm sorry. To everyone else, treat servers like human beings. They work harder than I ever will. Attached was a photo of a check to Daniel's subscribed in school. Vincent read it twice, then checked the school's donation portal. $20,000 from Kristina Vandermeer. $20,000 from Chad Morrison, $20,000 from James Chen, $20,000 from Peter Zielinski, $80,000, all deposited before dawn. They're scared, Michael observed. They should be. Vincent pulled out his phone, showed Michael another image. This arrived at 5 this morning. It was a handwritten apology to Sophie. 12 pages long, signed by all 4 of them, delivered by courier to Vincent's building. Michael whistled. One conversation, and they fold completely. Boss, you didn't even have to follow through. I didn't have to. Vincent filed the letter carefully. They did the research themselves, figured out who I really am, what I'm capable of. Fear did the rest. So that's it? They apologize and we're done? Not quite. Vincent's smile was cold. Schedule a meeting with Vandermeer Properties. I want to discuss some building contracts in our territory. Very favorable terms for us. How favorable? Extremely. And Mr. Vandermeer will accept them gladly. Because he knows what happens if he doesn't. Michael grinned. You're leveraging this. I'm teaching them a lesson. Vincent leaned back in his chair. Kristina embarrassed my daughter publicly. Now her father gets to explain to his board why he's suddenly accepting below-market rates on prime properties. Chad faces questions about his trading strategies. The others deal with audits and investigations that go nowhere but cost them time and money. Punishment without violence. The best kind. Vincent looked at Kristina's post again. They get to keep their lives. But they'll always remember, always know that cruelty has consequences, that hurting people has a cost. What about Marcus? The manager? Vincent's expression hardened. Marcus is a different problem. He betrayed his own employee to protect customers who were wrong. That requires a different lesson. What kind of lesson? The kind that ensures he never does it again. Vincent pulled out his phone, made a call. It was answered immediately. This is Vincent Zhao. I want to discuss the Bellissimo account. The voice on the other end belonged to Anthony Luciano, head of the family that controlled most of Manhattan's restaurant scene. Vincent, what can I do for you? You have a manager at Bellissimo, Marcus Webb. He needs to be replaced. Pause. That's not usually how we handle personnel. This is personal. He humiliated my daughter, fired her unjustly. Vincent's voice was ice. I want him gone. Today. Another pause. Then, consider it done. Anyone you want in his place. Vincent hadn't thought about that, then smiled. Actually, yes. I'll send you a name. After he hung up, he called Sophie. She answered groggily. Did I wake you? It's 9 a.m., Dad. I worked until 2 last night. She stopped. Worked. Past tense. I don't have a job anymore. You do. Now. How would you like to be floor manager at Bellissimo? Silence. Then. What? Marcus is being replaced. I'm recommending you for the position. It's yours if you want it. I can't, I've never managed. You'll learn. And you'll be better at it than Marcus because you actually care about people. Vincent paused. Unless you don't want it. There are other options. He could hear Sophie breathing, thinking, wrestling with the decision. I want it, she said finally. When do I start? Tomorrow. Today you're coming to the office. We have work to do. What kind of work? The kind that teaches you how power really works in this city. The kind that makes sure you're never powerless again. Vincent smiled. Welcome back to the family, Sophie. He hung up and looked at Michael. Clear my schedule for the day. I'm teaching my daughter the business. Which parts? All of them. Vincent stood, gathering files. She needs to understand how this world works. The legitimate businesses, the other businesses, the connections, the leverage, everything. Michael raised an eyebrow. Everything? Boss, she's been away for 2 years. That's a lot to take in. She's smart. She'll handle it. Vincent's voice softened. And if she can't, if you're hooked on this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more emotional stories like this one. If she decides this life isn't for her, at least she'll understand why I make the choices I make. Why sometimes you need to be feared to keep the people you love safe. And if she thrives? If she takes to it? Vincent thought about Sophie's face last night. The anger, the determination, the part of her that wanted revenge, wanted power, wanted to never feel small again. "Then I'll have an heir," he said quietly. "Someone to take over when I'm gone. Someone who understands both worlds, the legitimate and the other. Someone who can bridge the gap." "What about Daniel?" "Daniel gets the life his mother wanted. Clean, normal, safe." Vincent moved toward the door. "But Sophie is mine now. She chose this. And I'm going to make sure she's ready for whatever comes next." Because something would come next. In Vincent's world, something always did. Rivals watching for weakness, law enforcement looking for cracks, allies testing boundaries. And now his daughter was visible. Now people would know that Vincent Zhao had a weakness, someone he'd burn the city down to protect. That made Sophie both an asset and a liability. She needed to learn fast how to be the first and avoid being the second. Vincent pulled out his phone, scrolled through contacts, started making calls. By the time Sophie arrived at his office 3 hours later, he had appointments scheduled with every major player in his territory: restaurant owners, import, export businesses, real estate developers, all legitimate on paper, all connected to the deeper network underneath, all people Sophie needed to meet, to understand, to eventually manage. "Ready?" Vincent asked when she walked in. Sophie looked nervous but determined. "Ready." "Good. First lesson. In this city, everything is connected. Every business, every relationship, every favor owed and given. You're about to see how it all fits together." He handed her a folder. "These are our legitimate businesses. Restaurants, import companies, real estate holdings. Study them, understand them. They're the foundation of everything else." Sophie opened the folder, started reading. Her eyes widened at the scope. "This is huge. I didn't realize you controlled this much." "I don't control it. I influence it." Vincent sat beside her. "There's a difference. Control makes enemies. Influence builds alliances. You want people to work with you because it benefits them, not because they're afraid. But last night, you scared those people. Last night was personal. They hurt you, so I responded personally." He tapped the folder. "But business is different. Business is about mutual benefit. You help me, I help you. Everyone wins. Except the people who don't play along?" Vincent smiled. "Them we scare." For the next 8 hours, Vincent walked Sophie through his empire. The restaurants that laundered money from less legal enterprises. The import companies that brought in both legitimate goods and other items. The real estate that provided income and cover for operations that couldn't exist openly. He introduced her to his advisors. His accountants who knew how to make money disappear and reappear clean. His lawyers who specialized in keeping businesses just legal enough. His connections in law enforcement who looked the other way for the right price. And slowly, Sophie began to understand. This wasn't just crime. It was an ecosystem. A parallel economy running beneath the legitimate one. Sophisticated, organized, powerful. The key, Vincent explained during dinner at one of his restaurants, is balance. Too much crime, you attract attention. Too little profit, you can't maintain the system. You need to be visible enough to seem legitimate but invisible enough to avoid scrutiny. Sophie picked at her food. "How do you sleep at night? Knowing what you're involved in?" "Easily." Vincent met her eyes. "Because I know what I'm protecting. This family, our people, the community that depends on us for protection, for jobs, for support, when legitimate society fails them." That sounds like a rationalization. "Maybe it is." He shrugged. "But it's also true. You think the government helps immigrants when they arrive with nothing? You think legitimate businesses hire people with accents and foreign degrees? They don't. We do. We give them jobs, protection, opportunities, while taking a cut." "While taking a cut?" Vincent agreed. "Nothing is free, Sophie. Even kindness has a price. The difference is whether that price is fair." Sophie was quiet for a long time. Then, "What happens if I can't do this? If I try and fail? Then you walk away." Vincent's voice was firm. "I'll still support you and Daniel. Still make sure you're safe. But you'll have to live, knowing you had the chance to take control of your life and chose not to. That's not fair." "Life isn't fair. That's the whole point." He leaned forward. "You learned that yesterday when those people threw soda on you, when Marcus fired you for being humiliated. When the world showed you that playing by the rules means nothing if you don't have power. Sophie's jaw tightened. So I should become like them? Use power to hurt people? You should become better than them. Use power to protect people, to give opportunities, to make sure what happened to you doesn't happen to others. Vincent's voice was passionate now. That's what I'm offering, Sophie. Not crime for its own sake, but a way to make this broken system work for people like us instead of against us. She looked at him with her mother's eyes, searching, judging, trying to reconcile the father she loved with the criminal he admitted to being. Okay, she said finally. Teach me. But Dad, I want to do this my way. I want to be better than you. More legitimate. Less violence. Vincent smiled. Good. Every generation should improve on the last. Your grandfather was a street soldier. I became a businessman. Maybe you'll become something even better. Maybe I'll become legitimate entirely. Take everything legal. Maybe you will. Vincent raised his glass. I'd be proud of you either way. As long as you're never powerless again. As long as you can protect yourself and Daniel. As long as you're safe. They clinked glasses. Father and daughter. Criminal and civilian. Past and future. Outside, the city glittered with lights. Millions of people living their lives, unaware of the networks operating beneath the surface. The power structures invisible to anyone who didn't know where to look. Sophie was learning to look, learning to see, learning to become part of something bigger than herself. And in a bathroom at Bellissimo, her stained shirt still hung in her locker, a reminder of where she'd been. Tomorrow, she'd take her first steps toward where she was going. Sophie's first day as floor manager at Bellissimo started at 6 a.m. She arrived 2 hours before the restaurant opened, her hands shaking as she unlocked the door with the key Vincent's people had delivered the night before. The dining room looked different in the early morning light. Less glamorous, more honest. Empty tables waiting to be filled, kitchen lights flickering to life, the smell of coffee brewing in the back. She was early, but not alone. 3 of the kitchen staff were already there, prepping for lunch service. They looked up when she entered, curiosity and suspicion in their eyes. You're the new manager? A woman in her 50s, head chef Maria Rodriguez, wiped her hands on her apron. The one who replaced Marcus? I'm Sophie. She kept her voice steady. Sophie Chen. Recognition flickered across Maria's face. Everyone in the restaurant had heard what happened. The soda incident. The firing. The mysterious dinner visit from men in suits. Marcus's sudden termination. You're Vincent Zhao's daughter, Maria said. Not a question. Sophie could have denied it. Could have tried to keep that part of her life separate. But her father's first lesson echoed in her mind. Never hide who you are. People respect honesty more than they respect fear. Yes, Sophie said simply. Maria studied her for a long moment, then nodded. Good. Marcus was a coward. Cared more about rich customers than the people who actually work here. Maybe you'll be different. I'll try to be. Trying isn't the same as doing. But Maria's voice had softened. Come on. I'll show you how the kitchen really runs. Not the version Marcus saw, but what actually happens. For the next 2 hours, Sophie learned more about Bellissimo than she had in 6 months of working there. Maria showed her where the real problems were. Outdated equipment the owners refused to replace. Supply issues Marcus had ignored. Staff scheduling that burned, like everyone out. The servers are working doubles with no breaks, Maria explained. Marcus didn't care because turnover meant he could hire cheaper. But it means nobody stays long enough to be good at the job. Sophie made notes on her phone. What if we hired more servers? Proper shifts with actual breaks? Cost money. Owners won't approve it. What if they did? Sophie met Maria's eyes. What would you change? Maria laughed, but it was bitter. Everything. I'd fix the walk-in freezer that breaks twice a week. Buy decent knives instead of these cheap pieces of garbage. Hire 2 more line cooks, so we're not drowning every service. Treat the staff like humans instead of machines. Make me a list, Sophie said. Everything you'd change if money wasn't an issue. I'll see what I can do. Maria's eyebrows rose. Just like that? Just like that. Sophie smiled. My father owns half this neighborhood. I think he can convince the Bellissimo owners to invest in their own restaurant. By the time the other staff arrived at 8, word had already spread. The new manager wasn't like Marcus. She was listening, making changes, and she had connections that made the owners nervous. Sophie spent the morning meeting with every staff member individually, learned their names, their situations, their complaints. Most were immigrants like her father had been, working multiple jobs, sending money home, trying to survive in a city that devoured people without power. She recognized herself in every face, the exhaustion, the determination, the quiet desperation of people one missed paycheck away from disaster. "I'm going to make this better," she told them. "I can't promise it'll be perfect, but I promise I'll actually try." Some believed her, others were skeptical, but everyone appreciated being asked, being seen, being treated like their opinions mattered. By noon, when lunch service started, Sophie had filled 3 pages of notes. Problems to fix, changes to make, ways to turn. Bellissimo from a place that chewed through staff into somewhere people actually wanted to work. Her phone buzzed during the lunch rush. A text from her father. "How's it going?" "Harder than I thought." "Better than I feared." "Good. Remember, you're not just managing a restaurant. You're building loyalty. People who trust you will do anything for you." Sophie pocketed her phone and watched the dining room fill with customers. Wealthy people ordering expensive meals, the same kind of people who'd thrown soda on her a week ago. But now she wasn't serving them. She was managing them, controlling their experience, deciding what they got and how they got it. The power shift was subtle but profound. A customer snapped his fingers at one of her servers. "Hey, you, I need water." Sophie was there in seconds. "Sir, my staff will be happy to help if you ask politely. Snapping your fingers isn't acceptable here." The man blinked, startled. "Excuse me?" "You're excused." Sophie's smile was professional and cold. "But if you'd like service, please treat my servers with respect. Otherwise, I'd be happy to call you a cab." The man's companion laughed nervously. "She's serious, Tom. Just ask nicely." Tom looked like he wanted to argue. Then he looked at Sophie again. Something in her expression made him reconsider. "May I please have some water?" he said stiffly. "Of course," Sophie gestured to the server. "Maria will be right with you." She walked away feeling taller, stronger, more like herself than she had in years. This was what her father meant. Not using power to hurt people, but using it to protect them. To make sure the Sophies of the world didn't get humiliated by the Kristinas. The lunch shift ended smoothly. Dinner prep started, and Sophie began to believe she could actually do this. Then Anthony Luciano walked through the door at 4 p.m. Sophie had never met Anthony Luciano, but she recognized him immediately. Everyone in her father's world knew what he looked like. Mid-50s, silver hair, expensive suit. He moved like a man used to being obeyed. 2 men flanked him. Not bodyguards exactly, but close enough. They scanned the room with professional efficiency, cataloging exits and threats. "You must be Sophie." Anthony's voice was smooth, cultured. "Vincent's daughter." "I've heard a lot about you." Sophie's heart hammered, but she kept her expression neutral. "Mr. Luciano, what can I do for you?" "Walk with me." He gestured toward the private dining room. Not a request. Sophie followed, aware of every eye in the restaurant on them. Maria in the kitchen. The servers setting up for dinner. Everyone knowing this moment mattered. In the private room, Anthony sat at the head of the table like he owned it. Because, in a way, he did. Bellissimo paid protection to his family, operated in his territory. One word from him and the restaurant could face endless problems. "I wanted to meet you," Anthony said. "See the girl who got Marcus fired and convinced your father to strong-arm the owners into making you manager." "I didn't strong-arm anyone." "Your father did." "Same thing." Anthony smiled. "Don't worry, I'm not upset. Marcus was a liability. Bad for business when managers prioritize the wrong things." Sophie sat across from him, forcing herself to stay calm. "If you're not upset, why are you here?" "Because you're Vincent Zhao's daughter. That makes you important. Visible. And visibility in our world can be dangerous." His smile faded. "You understand what I'm saying? You're worried I'll attract attention. I'm worried you'll attract the wrong kind of attention." Anthony leaned forward. "Your father is careful, discreet. He keeps his business separate from his legitimate operations. But you're a bridge between both worlds. That makes you vulnerable. I can handle myself." "Can you?" Anthony's voice sharpened. "You've been back in your father's world for what? 3 days? You think that's enough time to understand the risks?" Sophie met his eyes steadily. I understand that people like Kristina Vandermeer thought they could hurt me without consequences. They were wrong. I understand that Marcus thought he could fire me for doing the right thing. He was wrong too. And I understand that you're testing me right now, seeing if I'm weak enough to scare. Anthony's eyebrows rose. I'm not scared, Sophie continued. I'm careful. I'm learning. And I'm protected by one of the most powerful men in this city. So unless you're here to start a war with my father, I suggest we skip the intimidation and get to the point. Silence. Anthony's men shifted uncomfortably. Then Anthony laughed, genuine and surprised. Vincent said you had steel in you. I didn't believe him. He sat back, reassessing. All right, Sophie Chen, no games. Here's the point. Your father asked me to make you manager here. I agreed because I respect Vincent, and because Marcus needed to go. But this restaurant is in my territory, under my protection. That means you work for me as much as you work for the owners. What does that mean exactly? It means you follow my rules. You don't bring attention to this place. You don't involve it in your father's business. You keep it clean, legitimate, profitable. Anthony's voice hardened. And if there's trouble, you call me first. Not your father. Me. Sophie understood. Anthony was drawing a line, asserting his authority, making sure she knew that Vincent's power didn't extend everywhere. Fair enough, she said. As long as your protection actually means something. I won't have my staff harassed or hurt by anyone. I don't care who they are or who they know. That's exactly why I'm here. Anthony pulled out his phone, showed her a photo. A man in his 30s, handsome, arrogant looking. Recognize him? Sophie shook her head. Brian Vandermeer, Kristina's older brother. Anthony pocketed the phone. He's been asking questions about the restaurant, about what happened to his sister. Sophie's stomach dropped. What kind of questions? The kind that suggest he wants revenge. The kind that make me nervous. Anthony stood. I'm telling you this as a courtesy. Because I respect your father and because I don't want problems in my territory. But Sophie, if Brian comes here, if he causes trouble, you need to handle it smart. Not angry. Smart. How do I handle it smart? Call me. Let me deal with it. Anthony moved toward the door. That's what protection means. You pay for it with respect and compliance. In return, problems disappear before they become disasters. He paused at the door. Your father is teaching you his world. That's good. You need to understand it. But remember, his world has rules, hierarchies, territory. You can't just operate however you want because Vincent Zhao is your father. You need to respect the structure. Or what? Anthony's smile was cold. Or you learn why the structure exists, the hard way. He left. His men followed, and Sophie sat alone in the private dining room, processing. 3 days ago, she'd been a powerless waitress. Now she was navigating mafia politics, territorial boundaries, and potential threats from wealthy families who thought they were untouchable. Her phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. Stay away from my sister, you gold-digging bitch. This isn't over. Sophie stared at the message. No signature, but she knew. Brian Vandermeer. She forwarded it to her father, then to Anthony Luciano, then deleted it and went back to work. If Brian wanted a war, he'd get one. But this time, Sophie wouldn't be the one who lost. That night, Sophie got home at 11. She was exhausted, feet aching, brain buzzing with everything she'd learned and done and survived. Daniel was still awake, doing homework at the kitchen table. He looked up when she entered, his 15-year-old face breaking into a smile. Sophie, where have you been? I tried calling. Sorry. She dropped onto the couch. Long day at work. Jenny said you got a new job, manager at some fancy place. Daniel closed his textbook. That's amazing. How'd you pull that off? Sophie hesitated. How much should she tell him? He was still a kid, still innocent. Still exactly what their mother had wanted him to be. I got lucky, she said finally. Right place, right time. Daniel frowned. You never get lucky. You work hard and make things happen. So what really happened? Smart kid. Too smart. I ran into some trouble at my old job, Sophie admitted. Dad helped me out, got me this new position. The room went cold. Daniel's expression shuddered. Dad, he repeated flatly. You talked to Vincent. His name is Dad, Daniel. Not to me. Daniel's voice was sharp. Mom made us promise we'd stay away from him, from his world, from everything he does. I know what Mom wanted. Then why did you call him? Daniel stood, agitated. You promised her. We both promised. I needed help. Sophie's voice rose. Your tuition was due, I lost my job, and we were about to lose everything. What was I supposed to do? Figure it out like we always have. Together. Daniel's eyes were wet. Instead, you went running to a criminal. The word hung between them. Criminal. The thing they'd never said out loud. The reality they'd danced around for years. He's our father, Sophie said quietly. He's a gangster. A bad guy. Mom said. Mom is dead. Sophie regretted it immediately, but couldn't take it back. She's dead, Daniel, and her principals don't pay rent, don't keep you in school, don't protect us from people who want to hurt us. Daniel stared at her like she was a stranger. You sound like him. Maybe that's not a bad thing. It's a terrible thing. Daniel grabbed his backpack. Mom died trying to keep us away from that life. Died working herself to death because she wouldn't take blood money. And you're just throwing that away? I'm trying to survive. By becoming what she hated? Daniel's voice broke. By giving up everything she believed in? Sophie wanted to explain. Wanted to make him understand about Kristina and the soda and Marcus and the powerlessness that had driven her to call Vincent. But looking at her brother's face, at the disappointment and hurt there, she couldn't find the words. Your tuition is paid, she said instead. For the whole year. You don't have to worry about school anymore. Great. I can get a good education with dirty money. Daniel headed for his room. That'll make Mom so proud. The door slammed. Sophie sat in the silence, feeling like she'd just lost something precious. Her brother's respect, his trust, maybe even his love. Her phone buzzed. Text from Vincent. How did Daniel take it? Not well. Give him time. He's young. He'll understand eventually. What if he doesn't? Then you move forward anyway. You can't live your life trying to please a ghost. Sophie, your mother made her choices. Now you're making yours. Sophie stared at the message. Was that what she was doing? Choosing her own path? Or was she just running from one form of powerlessness to another? A knock at the door interrupted her thoughts. Sophie checked the peephole. A young man in a delivery uniform stood there, holding a large envelope. She opened the door, chain still on. Yes? Delivery for Sophie Chen. He held up the envelope. From Brian Vandermeer. Sophie's blood went cold. I'm not accepting anything from him. Your choice. The delivery guy shrugged. But Mr. Vandermeer said to tell you this is a one-time courtesy. Next time, he delivers his message personally. He dropped the envelope on her doorstep and left. Sophie stared at it for a full minute before opening the door and picking it up. Inside were photos. Dozens of them. Her leaving work. Walking to the subway. Entering her building. Photos of Daniel at his school. At the pizza place where he worked weekends. At the park where he played basketball. A note card in elegant handwriting. You humiliated my sister. Made our family look weak. I want you to understand something. You're not untouchable just because Vincent Zhao is your father. You have vulnerabilities, people you love, places you feel safe. None of it is real. I can get to you anytime I want. The question is, when? Sophie's hands shook as she read it. This wasn't just a threat. It was a promise. Brian had been watching her, watching Daniel, building a case for how to hurt her. She called Vincent immediately. Sophie, what's wrong? Brian Vandermeer just sent me photos. Of me, of Daniel, with a threat. Her voice was surprisingly steady. He's been following us. Silence. Then, forward me everything, right now. Sophie sent the photos, the note card, everything. Waited while her father reviewed them. When he called back, his voice was cold fury. Pack a bag, both of you. You're moving tonight. Dad, this isn't a negotiation. Brian Vandermeer just declared war. Made it personal. Made it about family. Vincent's voice dropped. He has no idea what he's started. What are you going to do? Whatever is necessary. But first, I'm getting you and Daniel somewhere safe. Michael's already on his way. He'll be there in 10 minutes. Pack essentials only. We'll get everything else later. Daniel won't want to come. He's angry about me contacting you. He'll come. Vincent's voice softened slightly. Or he'll get a lesson in why sometimes you need protection even when you don't want it. Either way, He's not staying in that apartment another night. The call ended. Sophie stood there, photos scattered around her, feeling the world shift again. 3 days ago, she'd wanted power, wanted control, wanted to never feel helpless. Now she understood what her father had tried to warn her about. Power came with a price. Visibility meant vulnerability. And family, the thing you loved most, became the weapon your enemies used against you. She knocked on Daniel's door. "Pack a bag. We're leaving." "I'm not going anywhere." Sophie opened the door, held up the photos. "These were just delivered. Brian Vandermeer. He's been watching you, watching us both. He's threatening to hurt you to get to me." Daniel's face went pale as he looked at the images. Photos of him walking home from school, buying pizza, laughing with friends, private moments violated, weaponized. "Who is Brian Vandermeer?" he asked quietly. "Someone I made an enemy of." Sophie's voice was steady now. "Someone who thinks hurting you will hurt me." "He's right." Daniel looked at her. Really looked at her, seeing not his sister but someone new, someone harder, someone who lived in a world where threats like this were real. "This is what Dad's life is like?" he asked. "People watching you? Threatening family?" "Yes. And you chose this?" Sophie met his eyes. "I chose to protect us, to make sure we never have to worry about money or safety or people like Kristina Vandermeer ever again. If that means living in Dad's world, then yes, I chose this." Daniel stared at the photos for a long moment. Then he started packing. They didn't speak. Didn't need to. The silence said everything. This was real now. The danger, the consequences, the price of power. Michael arrived 12 minutes later with 3 other men. They swept the apartment for bugs, cameras, anything Brian might have planted. Found 2 listening devices, one in Sophie's room, one in the living room. "He's been listening for days," Michael said grimly. "Heard everything. Plans, conversations, daily routines. He's building a profile." Sophie felt violated in a way that went deeper than the soda incident. That had been public humiliation. This was invasion. Intrusion into the only place that had felt safe. "Where are we going?" she asked, as they loaded into the SUV. "Safe house in Brooklyn." "Your father's already there." Michael glanced at Daniel, who sat silent and pale in the back seat. "Kid okay?" "He's processing. Tell him to process faster. Where we're going, he needs to be alert, aware. These people don't play games." Daniel's voice was small. "I know." The drive to Brooklyn took 30 minutes. The safe house was a brownstone on a quiet street, 3 stories of secured, monitored, protected space, guards at every entrance, cameras on every corner. The kind of security that screamed danger was real. Vincent met them at the door. He looked at Daniel for a long moment, then pulled him into a hug. Daniel stood stiff in his arms, not returning the embrace but not pulling away either. "I'm sorry," Vincent said quietly. "Sorry you're caught up in this. Sorry your sister had to call me. Sorry that trying to live a normal life brought you here." He pulled back, hands on Daniel's shoulders. "But you need to understand something. This is happening. Brian Vandermeer made it happen. Not Sophie. Not me. Him. He chose to make this personal. To go after family. That's on him." Daniel's jaw was tight. "What happens now?" "Now we keep you safe while I handle Brian." Vincent's voice was cold. "And Daniel? I handle problems permanently. Do you understand what I'm saying? You're going to kill him. Not a question, if necessary." Vincent didn't flinch from it, didn't soften it. "He threatened my children. That's not something I forgive." Daniel looked at Sophie, at their father, at the reality of the world they'd been pulled into. "Mom wouldn't want this," he said finally. "Your mother wanted you safe and happy." Vincent's voice gentled. "Sometimes those things require hard choices. Ugly choices. Choices she couldn't make, but I can." He gestured toward the house. "Come inside. We'll talk more. But right now, you need to be somewhere I know you're protected." They went inside. The safe house was comfortable, well-furnished. Nothing like the stark prison Sophie had imagined. More like a very nice apartment where you happened to be guarded 24 hours a day. Vincent's advisors were already there. Michael, plus 3 others. Sophie had met briefly during her introduction to the business. They'd set up a war room in the dining room, laptops and files spread across the table. "Status?" Vincent asked, switching immediately from father to crime lord. "Brian Vandermeer is exactly what we thought. Spoiled, arrogant, thinks his family name protects him. One of the advisors pulled up information on a laptop. He's been planning this for days, hired a PI to follow Sophie and Daniel, planted the listening devices himself 3 nights ago. "How'd he get in?" Sophie asked. "Picked the lock. Kid thinks he's clever, thinks he's scary." The advisor smiled without humor. He has no idea what actual scary looks like. Vincent studied the information. What about his father? Robert Vandermeer? Doesn't know what Brian's doing. Been traveling in Europe for business. Brian's acting alone, thinking he can restore his sister's honor or some bullshit like that. Good. Vincent's voice was ice. That makes this easier. He turned to Sophie and Daniel. Brian Vandermeer made a mistake. He thought attacking you would hurt me. He was right. But he also thought I'd negotiate. Thought I'd back down to avoid escalation. Vincent's smile was terrifying. He was wrong. Over the next 3 days, Sophie watched her father work. It was like watching a master pianist perform every move deliberate, every action precise, every consequence calculated. Brian Vandermeer's life didn't end. It just stopped being his. His credit cards were mysteriously frozen. His apartment lease was terminated for violations he didn't commit. His car was towed repeatedly from legal parking spots. His phone number somehow ended up on every spam list in existence. Small things. Annoying things. Things that added up to a life suddenly going wrong in 1,000 tiny ways. But that was just the opening move. On day 2, Brian lost his job. His employer received anonymous information about drug use. False information, but believable enough that Brian was fired pending investigation. His gym membership was canceled. His favorite restaurants suddenly had no tables available. His friends started avoiding his calls. Sophie watched it happen through reports from Vincent's people. Watched Brian's life systematically dismantled with the same precision her father had used to build his empire. "This is cruel," she said on the 3rd day, watching surveillance footage of Brian yelling at a bank manager about his frozen accounts. "This is measured," Vincent corrected. "He threatened my children. I could have made him disappear. Instead, I'm teaching him that actions have consequences. By ruining his life? By making him understand that he lives in my city, that his family name means nothing against real power, that threatening Sophie Chen Zhao means facing Vincent Zhao." Her father's voice was cold. "He'll recover eventually, find a new job, rebuild his credit, learn his lesson. But he'll remember. Everyone connected to him will remember. And they'll think twice before coming after my family again." Daniel had been quiet for 3 days, processing everything, watching their father orchestrate Brian's destruction with clinical efficiency, learning what real power looked like when wielded by someone who'd spent decades perfecting it. On the 4th morning, he finally spoke. "Is this what you do? Destroy people?" Vincent looked at his son. "When necessary. When they threaten what I love. When negotiation and warnings fail. How many people have you destroyed? Enough to keep this family safe for 20 years. Enough that most people in this city know better than to touch what's mine." Vincent's voice softened. "Daniel, I'm not a good man. I've done things your mother couldn't forgive. Things that would horrify you if you knew the details. But everything I've done has been to protect this family, to make sure you and Sophie never have to live the way I did. Powerless, vulnerable, at the mercy of people who saw us as less than human." Daniel absorbed this. "Mom thought there was another way, a better way. Your mother was a saint. I loved her more than life itself. But she was wrong." Vincent's voice cracked slightly. "She died exhausted and broke, still believing hard work and goodness would be enough. They weren't. They never are. Power is the only thing that protects you in this world. Power and fear and the willingness to do what others won't. So, Sophie and I, we're just learning to be like you? Criminals who destroy people? You're learning to survive." Vincent met his son's eyes. "To protect yourselves and each other. What you do with that knowledge is up to you. Sophie chose to step into my world. You can choose differently. I'll support either choice, but I won't let either of you be victims again." The room fell, silent. Outside, the city continued its endless rhythm. Millions of people living, working, fighting to survive. Sophie thought about her mother, about the promise she'd broken, about Daniel's disappointment and Vincent's cold efficiency and Brian Vandermeer's life falling apart. She thought about power and the price of safety, and whether there was really any difference between protection and control. Her phone buzzed. A text from Maria Rodriguez at Bellissimo. Kitchen equipment arrived. New freezer, new knives, everything you promised. The staff can't believe it. Thank you. Sophie smiled despite everything. Her father's world was dark and complicated and morally murky. But it also got things done, fixed problems, made life better for people who needed it. Maybe that was enough. Maybe you didn't have to be purely good to do good things. Maybe power could be used for both destruction and creation. Maybe she could be her father's daughter without becoming exactly like him. I want to go. Back to work, she said suddenly. I want to keep managing Bellissimo. Keep making changes. Keep helping the staff. Vincent nodded. You will. Once Brian's situation is resolved. How long until that happens? Soon. Vincent's smile was cold. I'm meeting with Robert Vandermeer tomorrow. Father to father. We're going to have a conversation about sons who make poor choices and the consequences that follow. What kind of conversation? The kind that ensures Brian never bothers us again. The kind that makes the entire Vandermeer family understand that wealth doesn't equal power. That there are people in this city they can't afford to anger. Vincent's voice was steel. The kind that ends this cleanly so you and Daniel can return to your lives. Sophie wanted to ask what would happen in that meeting. What threats would be made. What deals would be struck. But part of her didn't want to know. Didn't want to see too clearly how the machinery of her father's world actually worked. Okay, she said simply. I trust you. Vincent's expression softened. That means everything to me, Sophie. Everything. That night, Sophie couldn't sleep. She lay in the unfamiliar bedroom of the safe house, staring at the ceiling, replaying the past week in her mind. One act of kindness to a homeless woman. That's where this started for the inspiration videos her father had shown her. One moment of compassion leading to protection, to power, to family reconciliation. For Sophie, it had been one act of cruelty. One moment of humiliation leading to the exact same path. Different beginnings, same destination. She wondered if that meant something. If the universe was trying to tell her that some people were destined for her father's world regardless of how they arrived, that power and protection always came with darkness attached. Or maybe it just meant that New York was a city of consequences. Actions mattered. Choices rippled outward. And sometimes you couldn't control where those ripples led. Her phone glowed in the darkness. She picked it up, scrolled to the photos Brian had sent, looked at images of herself and Daniel, unaware they were being watched. Vulnerable. Targeted. Then she deleted them. All of them. Because they represented a version of herself that didn't exist anymore. The powerless waitress. The struggling sister. The girl who believed being good was enough. That girl was gone. She died the moment Coca-Cola splashed across her face. The moment Marcus fired her. The moment she called her father. Who remained was Sophie Chen Zhao. Vincent Zhao's daughter, floor manager at Bellissimo. Someone learning to navigate a world where power mattered more than principles. Someone who would never be humiliated again. The meeting between Vincent Zhao and Robert Vandermeer happened at Neutral Territory, a private club in Midtown, where both legitimate businessmen and those with darker connections could meet without raising eyebrows. Sophie didn't attend. Neither did Daniel. But Vincent called her immediately after, his voice carrying a satisfaction she'd rarely heard. It's done, he said simply. What happened? Robert Vandermeer is a smart man. Smarter than his children. When I showed him what Brian had been doing, the surveillance, the threats, the listening devices, he understood immediately that his son had started something that could destroy their entire family. Sophie could hear the smile in her father's voice. He apologized. Profusely. Promised Brian would be sent to their London office indefinitely. Offered compensation for the distress caused. Asked very politely if there was anything he could do to make amends. What did you say? I said his family would donate $200,000 to a scholarship fund for immigrant children. That Brian would issue a public apology. And that the Vandermeer family would remember that wealth doesn't mean immunity from consequences. Vincent paused. He agreed to everything. Within an hour, Brian was on a plane to London. He won't be back. Relief flooded through Sophie. It's really over? It's over. You and Daniel can go home. Back to your lives. Back to Bellissimo. Vincent's voice softened. Back to building something better than what I've given you. 3 days later, Sophie stood in Bellissimo's dining room before opening. Her staff gathered around her. The new equipment gleamed in the kitchen. The schedule had been revised to give everyone proper breaks. Wages had been increased. The restaurant felt different, warmer, more human. "I know the past 2 weeks have been strange," Sophie said, looking at faces that had become familiar. Maria, the line cooks, the servers who'd worked alongside her before her promotion. Management changed, policies changed. A lot happened very fast. She took a breath. "I'm not going to pretend I got this position through normal channels. My father has connections. He used them. But I want you to know, something I'm not here to coast on his name. I'm here to make this place better. For all of us." Maria stepped forward. "You've already started. The equipment alone changes everything. But more than that, you listen. You see us. That matters more than any fancy freezer." Others nodded agreement. One of the younger servers, a girl named Luz who reminded Sophie of herself a month ago, spoke up. "You stood up to that customer who snapped at me. First time anyone's ever done that. Made me feel like I mattered." "You do matter," Sophie said firmly. "Everyone here matters. We're not just bodies filling space. We're people building something together. And I promise as long as I'm managing this place, nobody treats you like you're less than. Not customers. Not owners. Nobody." The staff broke into applause. Spontaneous, genuine, the sound filling the empty restaurant with something that felt like hope. That night, dinner service was the smoothest Sophie had ever seen. The kitchen ran like a machine, but a human one, efficient without being cruel, fast without being frantic. Servers smiled real smiles. Customers noticed the difference, even if they couldn't name what had changed. Sophie moved through the dining room, checking tables, solving small problems, feeling more herself than she had in years. This was power too. Not the dark, complicated kind her father wielded, but something cleaner. The power to make people's lives better, to create space where dignity mattered. Daniel came by after his shift at the pizza place, still wary but curious. Sophie gave him the tour, showed him the new kitchen, introduced him to the staff, let him see what she'd built in 2 weeks. "It's nice," he admitted grudgingly. "Different than I expected." "Different how?" "I don't know. I thought Dad's world was all violence and crime. But this," Daniel gestured around the restaurant. "This is just a good workplace. People seem happy." "That's what I'm trying to do," Sophie said, quietly. "Take the resources Dad's world provides and use them for something good. Something Mom would have been proud of." Daniel looked at her for a long moment. "You really think that's possible? Being connected to his world without becoming part of it?" "I'm already part of it. We both are. We were always part of it, even when we pretended otherwise, even when Mom tried to keep us separate." Sophie touched her brother's arm. "The question isn't whether we're connected. It's what we do with that connection." "And you're choosing to use it for this? Helping restaurant workers and managing a dinner shift?" "For now. Maybe someday I'll do more. Or maybe this is enough," Sophie smiled. "I don't have to run Dad's empire to benefit from his protection. I can build my own thing, something that's mine." Daniel absorbed this. Then, slowly, he nodded. "Okay, I still don't like it. Still think Mom would be disappointed. But," he looked around the restaurant again, "maybe she'd understand. Eventually. That's all I can ask for." They stood together in the dining room, watching customers eat and laugh and enjoy their evening, completely unaware of the complicated web of power and protection that kept this space safe and thriving. Sophie thought about Kristina Vandermeer's public apology, now framed in her office. About Brian Vandermeer on a plane to London, learning consequences existed even for wealthy white men. About Marcus, fired and blacklisted, learning that cruelty to employees carried its own price. She thought about her mother's dreams and her father's reality, and the space she was trying to carve between them. The door opened. Vincent walked in, dressed impeccably, looking every inch the successful businessman. He caught Sophie's eye and smiled, not the cold smile of a crime lord, but the warm smile of a father proud of his daughter. "Beautiful place," he said, approaching. "You've done well." "We've done well," Sophie corrected. "I couldn't have done any of this without you." "Maybe, but I couldn't have turned money into meaning. That's all you." Vincent looked around the restaurant with genuine appreciation. "Your mother would have loved this. Seeing you take care of people. Building something good. Even if it's funded by your world? Especially because of that." Vincent's voice was soft. "Money is just money, Sophie. It's what you do with it that matters." She understood that, even if she couldn't accept where mine came from. He kissed her forehead gently. I have to go. Business. But I wanted to see what you'd built. Wanted to tell you I'm proud. Thank you, Dad. Vincent left as quietly as he'd arrived. And Sophie returned to work, to managing and problem-solving and building the life she'd chosen. One where Coca-Cola thrown in cruelty had led to power claimed with purpose. One where being Vincent Zhao's daughter meant protection but also responsibility. One where she could honor her mother's memory by doing good, even if resources came from her father's complicated empire. Sophie Chen Zhao had learned what it meant to be powerless, had learned what it cost to be cruel, had learned that kindness without protection was vulnerability, but power without purpose was just destruction. Now she was learning something new, how to be both her parents' daughter, gentle like her mother, strategic like her father, building something that belonged entirely to herself. The dining room filled with the sound of conversation and laughter. Maria called from the kitchen that the special was running low. A customer needed recommendations. A server needed approval for a substitution. Normal problems. Human problems. The kind Sophie had always handled, but now with the confidence of someone who knew she was protected, valued, powerful in ways that mattered. She smiled and got back to work, building her empire one dinner service at a time. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you loved this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.